Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Interactive Livestream Forum. So my name's Billie Sankovic, and I'm from the team at Western Sydney Community Forum, and I'll be your host for the session today. So I'm standing on Ravulo land in southwestern Sydney, and indeed I've been standing here for a good 10 weeks or so and it's a beautiful sunny spring day today, I must say, on Ravulo land. And I'd like to acknowledge with respect the traditional custodians of this land that I'm standing on and of the many lands that we are all standing on today here for our session. I pay my respects to elders on this land and beyond, both past, present, and of course future. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're really pleased to have you here. And as you may be aware, the interactive live stream forums are really an opportunity to bring us together across Greater Western Sydney during COVID-19. And the forums provide a platform for us to share information and tools and resources. And importantly, they also provide an opportunity for us to discuss priorities now and into the future. So, of course, it continues to be a time of uncertainty, but having said that, it was really pleasing to hear the news this morning that exercise is now the same across all of New South Wales, regardless of where you live and which LGA you come from. And it was also great to hear that we've reached 70% of New South Wales or people in New South Wales having received at least one dose of the vaccine. And look, I'd really like to note also at that point that the highest rates of vaccination take-up that we've seen now for several weeks is by the communities across Greater Western Sydney. And to me, that really demonstrates the extraordinary level of commitment to public health for the benefit of the whole of New South Wales and indeed for the nation. And as always, a shout out to the tireless and amazing work that's going on in the grassroots by community leaders and community groups and community organisations. And really that leads us straight to our topic of conversation today, and that is the pillars of resilience in Western Sydney, and specifically as it relates to COVID-19 survival and recovery at the moment. So in our work at Western Sydney Community Forum, since the lockdown started some 10 weeks ago, it became really clear and really quickly that the pillars of resilience really focus in on three key areas. Firstly, family and community. Secondly, health and safety. And thirdly, livelihood and income. And today is really an opportunity for us to discuss that, and also to discuss the policy and the service levers that assist families and communities in Greater Western Sydney at this time. And look, I'm really pleased that we've got a fabulous panel. We always have fabulous panels. Today, we've got a mix of expertise and knowledge and perspectives from government, from academic evidence-based, and from grassroots community perspectives. So I'm really looking forward to having the conversation we're having today. So before I do introduce our panellists, a reminder that this is an interactive session, and I know many of you have attended many of our sessions, and I understand we're a full house today, and there were no spots left a couple of hours ago, and we had to open a few more. So it's clear that there's plenty of thoughts and plenty of questions out there. So if you are joining us in the room today, I really encourage you to raise your hand and to ask questions of the panel or to make comments. And if you are joining us in the live stream, we're monitoring that as well. So feel free, and please do send through your questions and comments, and we will bring that into the room for the panel to consider. So, okay, let's get to it. So I'd now like to introduce our panellists, and I'd like to start with the Honourable Alister Henskens, MP and New South Wales Minister for Families, Communities and Disability Services. Welcome, Minister. Great to have you here.
Good afternoon, Billy, and hello, everyone. I hope you're all well, and it's great to join you this afternoon.
Welcome, welcome. Some good news that we had last week, so I'm looking forward to having a bit of a chat about that. So thanks for being here, Minister. I'd now like to introduce Melissa Monteiro, and Melissa is the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Migrant Resource Centre and is just one of the key community leaders in Western Sydney, and of course works with the forum very closely. Melissa, great to have you here and welcome.
Thank you so much, Billy, for having me. I'm looking forward to this. Yes,
it's going to be a good discussion. And I'd also like to introduce Professor Jioji Ravulo. And Jioji is the Professor and Chair of Social Work and Policy Studies at the University of Western Sydney and a very good friend of Western Sydney. So welcome, Jioji, and great to have you here.
Thanks heaps, Billy. I'm from the University of Sydney. I know you said Western Sydney, but that's okay because I came from Western Sydney University, so represent. So hi, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be as well part of this shared conversation. I too would like to acknowledge that I'm on the unceded lands of the Ravulo people. And so thank you for allowing me to join into this shared conversation today.
Thank you for that, Jioji. And I'll repeat that. The Professor and Chair of Social Work and Policy Studies at the University of Sydney. I'm a Western Sydney girl. I went to Western Sydney Uni and can't help it, just came out. My apologies. But thank you, Jioji, for being here. And thank you all for being here and for joining us today. And look, as I've already said, I'm really pleased that we're exploring this topic from sort of diverse perspectives, and that's what you all bring. You really are going to bring a different lens to the conversation today. So to sort of kick off, and just for everybody out there as well, raise your hand and, you know, ask those questions and make those comments and we'll bring it into the room. So to kick off, Minister, I might start with you and all of you really to answer the question around what pillars of resilience in Western Sydney are you seeing from your lens and your perspective that will help us to get through this now, but also to secure our future and recovery into the future. So Minister, I might kick off with you.
Thanks very much, Billy. And I must say, it seems like a world away since we were all at the Zest Awards when I got to meet many of you just shortly after I became Minister. Billy, in answer to your question, I think a really strong pillar of Western Sydney is obviously the community organisations and the sense of community, from my point of view. You know, Western Sydney is just, it's quite an amazing area. It's probably the multicultural capital of the world, or close to it. It's got so many different communities, all living in very harmonious circumstances. People have a strong connection to their particular community organisations, and I think that really builds resilience. I'm a great believer in you know, people and people a group. You know, people want to be in a community. Plato, I think it was Plato or Aristotle, said that people were political animals. What he meant by that was that people like being in groups, not about politics, not parliaments. People like being in groups, like associating with people who they are familiar with. And so, you know, for me, we've got a great sense of community and great organisations in Western Sydney.
Thank you, Minister. And, you know, just your reference in terms of the resilience, you know, a pillar of resilience being community organisations. Can I say Western Sydney Community Forum, in partnership with Western Sydney Migrant Resource Centre, will be launching a paper soon. And I was reviewing that this morning, and some of the surveying that's been done by the Migrant Resource Centre with local people said almost 70% of local people get their information through their local community organisation and their local community groups and community leaders. So it's extraordinary pillar of resilience. Thank you for that. Melissa, what pillar of resilience in Western Sydney are you seeing that's going to help us get through this?
Billie, firstly, can I just say that the core elements, as you've outlined already, are survival and recovery, all in the same. I can see a perfect blend. As the minister has alluded as well, and you have said, community organizations, the roles that community organizations have played in the last 18 months, the efforts of so many community leaders, the pop-ups that have just, sprung up, people just responding, have really changed and bettered the lives, I'd say, Billie, of thousands of people in the last year alone. Yes, we acknowledge there have been many hardships. Yes, we acknowledge that many people have lost their jobs, have reduced incomes. Yes, we acknowledge that it's been, a hard and a difficult time. Families have faced many setbacks, etc. There has been loss of income. There's been increasing debt, loss of hours, loss of shifts, exploitative work conditions, unsafe work conditions. There's, as we all know, domestic violence, the mental health, the abuse, the domestic violence at home, the inability to meet our basic needs, financial hardships, large families, the cost of rent, Billie, increasing housing issues, homelessness for so many of our families and our communities, rent reductions, rent increases, distress, anger, sense of dehumanization. I just want to take you all back to the time with the international students, temporary visa holders, were just, asked to find their way back home. I can say to you, many of them didn't. Many of them continued to stay here. And a sense of resilience has, it's unbelievable the degrees to which people have overcome, and communities and community organizations, as the minister has very rightly said, community organizations rising up, stepping up. It's just been unimaginable. And we've seen that it's really made a huge difference. So for me, the biggest pillar of resilience has been our not-for-profit sector, Billie, in Western Sydney. Champions, I want to take you back very quickly to a recent example that we've had with the Afghanistan situation, Billie. Once again here, we've seen communities regroup, communities come together, community organizations, community leaders, ethnic community leaders, associations, stepping up, having meetings till, there was a community leader who said to me, I've slept at 3:30 last night. That's because she was on the phone, helping people, providing support. This is who we are, and these are our strengths, Billie, in Western Sydney.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's certainly coming through. My heart, I've been absorbed with, what's going on, in Afghanistan, and the impact that's having not only there, but, in the diaspora, and yes, and certainly across all those levels. Thank you so much, Melissa, for highlighting those priorities. And Jioji, Professor Jioji.
Thanks, Billie. I think one of the key things that is an ongoing pillar for people of Western Sydney is our collectivist cultures. A lot of us come from collectivist cultures where my well-being is your well-being. And I think this is a major strength that we can continue to harness and utilise as part of our shared approach. This includes having conversations with people within our local communities to ensure that they're okay, knowing that if I'm feeling like I'm not supported, I know that I am part of this bigger network of community as well. So I think one of the things that services can continue to lean into, which they've been doing an amazing job of, is work alongside the strengths of collectivist cultures to also meaningfully inform the way in which you deliver service. And this is something that we continue to see time and time again with community-based services, their desire and willingness to meet the needs of the community in which they serve. So that in and of itself, knowing that we have that collectivist approach alongside resilient community agencies, have really been a great support for our region.
Yeah, absolutely, Jioji. And we've seen that in spades, and, this vaccination uptake as well. And the speed of it in Western Sydney has just been really demonstrated that as well. We have a number of questions already coming through, which is great. So we might actually turn to some of those now. So we've got a question. We've got a hand raised by Vani Tavodi. Vani, would you like to ask your question? Vani, welcome. Can we hear you? Vani, we don't seem to have a good connection going on here. Vani, are you there? Okay, we might come back to you, Vani. We also have a question from Atem. Atem, are you there?
Unmute myself. Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Atem.
Okay, that's good. Great to hear from the speakers. Thank you very much. I have two questions. One question is to the minister and probably everybody else. We have just talked about community organizations and the role they play in supporting the community. I work at Fairfield City Council, and one of the things that we have been advocating over the last couple of years is that our community organizations, the grassroots, are not being funded, and they are doing a lot of work. So Fairfield is an area where you have most of the refugees who came to Australia in the last 5 years settled in Fairfield, and Fairfield is an area that historically received huge numbers of refugees and humanitarian entrants, including asylum seekers. The organizations that they establish have been struggling for funding. So it's great to hear that their role now is being recognized, but they have been left to just struggle, and that struggle continues. It's great to recognize, but where are the resources? The second question is to specifically Professor Jioji. Hi, Jioji. Good to see you here. I'm really excited to hear that the collectivist culture is being recognized as a source of strength. What we have been hearing in the media about Southwest Sydney around COVID has been spreading because of family networks. And that to me has been almost, and this is my own reflection, about this, it's almost sounds, I should say, a code for racism, really.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, Atem, if I can just say that, there's been so much concern about some of the public narrative and how that's been applied. So excellent question. I might throw, Minister, to your first question to the Minister Henskens, just resourcing. We know in Greater Western Sydney that the level of investment in locally based, place-based, trusted community organisations hasn't, grown in some decades and decades, but the population has grown. So, Minister, did you want to address that specifically?
Well, thanks, Billy. Yes, in respect of asylum seeker funding, which was the particular issue that Atem raised, about 2 weeks ago, we announced another $5.5 million funding boost for asylum seeker organisations, and that was in addition to $750,000, which we announced earlier on during the shutdown. So that's a combination of $6.25 million, and that's going to, that was a consequence of actually us listening to community and religious leaders about this issue and responding to that. So that money will be able to be used for food, medical support, essential housing and transport to support refugees and asylum seekers.
Yeah, that was very, very welcome funds, Minister. So thank you so much for that. And thank you, Atem, for the question. I'm going to come back to that point in a moment because we've got some other questions around that. But I might just turn, Jioji, to you in terms of that question Atem put. Very good question around the public narrative.
Yeah, totally. It's a great question. And I encourage us to have critical conversations like this. If we're not able to have real talk, real conversations about what people may be experiencing and or feeling, then we're not able to come up with tangible, sustainable solutions. So let me encourage us to be mindful of how we understand where people might be at and how they're feeling with those particular areas of concern that have been sort of lined and sort of put into this particular area. I welcome those conversations, and it's not about being or having a critical or having a criticism towards government structures. Rather, it's about us being able to understand the realities that people might be in. So let's continue to note those as part of our public conversation to ensure that that can be part of the solutions moving forward.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that, Jioji. I'm just going to keep going with questions. We have so many questions that are coming through, which is fantastic. So keep them coming. I've got a question here from Esther. And Esther says, Minister and panelists, thank you. Minister, thank you for acknowledging the key role our sector plays in funding us for sector transformational work, and the funding will assist us greatly. So Esther's question is, what do you see as the role of place-based services like hers, which is a local community neighbourhood centre, in terms of COVID-19 recovery? Melissa, I might ask you to make a few comments there, and then I might throw to you, Minister.
Thank you, Billie. Yes, definitely. And hello to Esther. Esther, I see one of the main things and the role could be in the NFP community organizations helping to rebuild the trust that, was actually broken at the first half of the pandemic. NGOs can now play that very big role in rebuilding trust with our communities in Western and Southwestern Sydney. NGOs taking initiatives, being on the front foot, that, people have faced all these hardships. Now is the time for us to make it all happen, for bringing these communities together. Slowly and surely, the trust will be rebuilt over a period of time. Trust to me is one of the biggest pillars, and that's the role that we as NFPs, not-for-profits, have. And we have access to those communities. People want to trust, but they don't have access, don't understand government, don't understand processes, don't understand, because there's been so much of negativity because of the first, the start of the pandemic was very hard and people did it so rough and tough. And now the biggest role that we can play, Esther, is actually rebuilding that element of trust in people.
Yes, absolutely. And that's come through in spades as well in the work that we're doing. Minister, what role do you see that organisations like that have in COVID-19 recovery and survival?
Look, I think that what has been shown in recent weeks has been just how important it is to have services embedded in local communities. The way in which, in particular in Western Sydney, organisations have responded, and I think you've already made mention, Billie, of the fact that the take-up rate of vaccination, once the community got behind that in Western Sydney, it's probably the biggest increase anywhere in the world in terms of vaccination. So I think once we start opening up more, we're going to still need to rely on our community organisations in terms of the recovery, because there's still obviously a way to go. The beginning of the, I think it was Winston Churchill that said, we're not at the end, we're not even at the beginning of the end, but we might be at the end of the beginning. And we, it will take a while to recover, and we are going to need our not-for-profits, as Melissa has said. And that's why we announced recently a $200 million support package for not-for-profits because we understand how important the continuity of your services are.
Yes, thank you, Minister. I might bring in another question from Dr. Chawla. So Dr. Chawla, if you're there, we'll pop you in the room. And Dr. Chawla, what's your question? Dr. Chawla? Okay, let's see how we go. You're there, I can see you, I can see your hand, and but there seems to be a bit of an issue with voice. So we might come back to you, Dr. Chawla, as well. We have another question from Raj. Raj, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Great, welcome Raj. And what's your question today for the panel?
My question is to the Honourable Minister. We understand it's not easy to run a government during this pandemic times. We all understand that and appreciate the work you all have been doing, where situation dynamically changes every day. There's a clear divide within Greater Sydney between people, I just put it in this way, where people who can work from home and those who can't work from home. Majority of those who can't work from home are from Western Sydney area. Specifically in regards to Western Sydney, while Australia was lucky in a way that we had plenty of advance notice on the second wave from other nations' experiences, where do you think as a community or even as a government, we failed to adequately proactively prepare Western Sydney communities for the second wave in regards to multicultural community engagement? That's my question number one. Now that the community engagement is working well, visibly seen through increased vaccination updates by the Western Sydney communities, what are our learnings from the current community engagement exercises, and how proactively are we prepared in handling similar situations in the future? Thank you.
Yes, good question, Raj, and thank you very much for that. Minister, I might throw to you, and then Jioji, I might get some of your thoughts in relation to that. So just in terms of preparations for this second wave, and then, you know, what are the learnings from this? Minister.
Well, look, I think in terms of the second, I'm not sure that we can call this the second wave. I think this is the first wave of Delta. I think we got the Alpha strain pretty under control, but obviously this Delta strain is enormously more contagious than we had to deal with previously, and that's provided particular challenges for us. I think it is fair to say that there's an important difference between people who can work from home and people who can't. But I really think the learnings, if I can go to the second part or the second question, the learnings is that it's enormously important to, if you're engaging in a public information campaign, to engage with the community leaders, as I think it was Billie, you perhaps, or maybe it was Melissa, said that 70% of information is coming through local organisations. Excuse me. So it's really, really important to be using those channels, and I think the government has improved that as this lockdown has gone on.
Yeah. Thank you, Minister. Thank you. Absolutely. And you know, it doesn't matter where we're getting the information from. Those sort of themes are really key. And I think the important thing is, and Raj, thank you for your question, it's about, so how do we not lose that strength and that capacity? Because, you know, there's always sort of different vulnerabilities that people experience. So, Jioji, did you have some thoughts about that?
I think you've actually touched on that key point that I was going to raise, Billie, this idea that we need to, and similar to what Adam was saying before, we do need to still document and learn from these experiences in a way that will help us to then evolve and develop our models of service delivery and provision, not necessarily at the response of COVID-19 alone, but to also continue to know how we can utilise those community strengths and contexts to ensure that when there are crises in the future, we're able to respond proactively rather than reactively. And I'm hoping that also, if we're looking at this notion of critical conversations, that, you know, it's not just the local community that needs to do that. That also requires state government and local governments, but even federal governments, to be aware of their role and responsibility in the context of those sustained conversations.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that, Jioji.
Add to that.
Yes, of course, Melissa.
Just to say that it was very important, and I think getting the messaging right and correct is one of the biggest learnings I think that the state government have had as well. Multicultural, I know many of the community leaders, because of the Police Multicultural Advisory Council, community leaders have actually given their opinions and helped the police to draft the messaging to the community. Is very important at the time, especially when the ADF, you know, when the defense forces were being brought in, and communities were, especially communities that have come from trauma backgrounds, there was much fear in terms of what would the military or the police going to be. People thought that there were going to be army trucks out on the streets, and well, we gave the feedback, and I think one of the learnings has been to get the messaging correctly, the announcements to be made at the right time, also to prepare the community. And that has been a good learning, I'd say, that happened.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And on that point, one of the fundamental considerations in any sort of, systemic or government efforts to create or support whole of communities is that there are communities that have experienced systemic state-sanctioned torture and trauma. And when we talk about that, we don't just talk about people that have, come from other lands. We also talk about people that know only Australia as their home, First Nations people, women and children who the system has let down in terms of safety. So there's a bunch of stuff that applies to across a number of people. So thank you for raising that, Melissa. And thank you, Raj, for the question. Also, Esther has just popped a note in saying thank you, everybody, for your comments. Thank you, Minister and Melissa, for really reaffirming the role of organisations like hers in recovery and into the future. We might just turn to a question now from Carol Tozer. Carol's the CEO of Bridging the Gap, Child, Youth and Family Centres. Thanks so much for your question, Carol. Minister, I'm going to direct this one to you. And, really is in the context, not-for-profits have been struggling to keep their businesses running over these 10 weeks without access to the business grants and to JobSaver. And of course, there was the announcement late last week about the support package, the 200 million support package, which included a reduction from 30% decline in revenue to 15%. And, that has certainly been very welcome. So, but Carol says this is only half of the equation. Not-for-profits earn income from commercial activities. They're suffering the same income downturn pressures that commercial businesses are suffering. And Carol says, can the Minister please note the reduction to 15% turnover is only half of the equation, and not-for-profits need to be able to separate government funding and government grants from commercial activities in turnover? And is there any consideration around excluding government grants from that calculation so that the community organisations we're talking about can get the access to government support to deliver the services they need to deliver? Thank you, Carol. Minister.
Well, the package has two different aspects to it. One is to make JobSaver more accessible, and that's the 15% turnover. So for for-profit organisations, they have to establish a 30% or greater turnover reduction before they qualify for the JobSaver payments from the government, those cash flow payments. For not-for-profit service organisations, they only need to establish a 15% reduction, And that's a 15% reduction looking at all of their revenue sources, whether it's government or non-government. If an organisation is unable to establish that 15% reduction, they will still qualify for one-off grants from the $50 million Social Sector Support Fund, which we announced as part of the package. So they will have, those are much more bespoke type of grants rather than the across the board, just show that you've got 15% or more turnover reduction and you're entitled to the JobSaver grants.
Yes, thank you, Minister. And you know, that 50 million additional support package was is really valuable in terms of being able to do that. And of course, the announcement was only made a few days ago, so we're still sort of looking as a sector at how does that impact, and you know, will that 50 million support package actually offset the fact that government grants are still included? So it'd be good to know. Do you have, Minister, any information on the next steps or the rollout of that package, the $200 million package and the JobSaver reduction?
So there are two aspects, Billy, to the rollout. The 15% JobSaver turnover payment, I'm expecting that will go live very shortly. It may be another week or so until the $50 million funds are available. We're just working through the terms and conditions that will apply to those, the criteria. Treasury and DCJ are working together to nut that out. But the turnover, the 15% turnover is a more straightforward because it's quite a universal type criteria. They're just sorting out the Service for New South Wales sort of technological mechanism by which people can apply for those payments, and I understand that they will be available very shortly. Can I just point out, however, that you know, the people that, going back to the question about those that are receiving government government payments as part of their turnover. You know, we're now talking about organisations who have had no change in their turnover to up to 14% reduction in their turnover. So these are the least impacted organisations, but they will still have access to that $50 million funded money in you know, hopefully in the very near future.
Fantastic. Thanks, Minister. And bit of a cheeky question, is there any sense of whether it's going to be a direct allocation or select tender or open tender? Any information on that front yet?
No.
I expected that answer, but I wanted to ask anyway. Jioji and Melissa, any comments from you quickly around the value this package from the New South Wales government will provide for being able to deliver services on the ground? Jioji, might start with you. Any thoughts? Yeah.
Sure. I think the key thing again is to ensure that we are getting funds or allocating funds to projects that are designed again to meet the needs of the community, just ensuring that that models are flexible and fluid in the sense of being able to respond to those particular needs. And I think that's something that we continue to see. Again, the NFPs are the backbone of civil society. They really do provide additional support to government structures to ensure that we're actually meeting the needs of the community. So I think it's just a matter of working alongside the government to ensure that monies are being allocated in a way that is helpful.
Yes, thank you, Jioji. Absolutely, and that clear link between investment and, you know, being able to direct that where it needs to go. Melissa, any additional thoughts on that?
Yes, Billy, can I just say that today was a perfect opportunity for us to actually talk with the Minister, and the Minister can clearly see that NFPs, especially in Western Sydney, have been, so to speak, a lifeline and a shoulder for many of these communities, many of our communities, to hundreds and thousands in Western Sydney. And we have been a pillar of support and strength to all of our communities, whether then migrant and refugee communities, asylum seekers, international student communities, and to the general mainstream communities. It is the role that NFPs have played during this time. Like Professor Jioji said, we have been the backbone. And I'm happy to have this conversation with the Minister. So Minister, you can actually see that, and people are acknowledging that's the role of us NFPs, and all our participants on this line are saying the same. I'm sure many are agreeing, nearly everybody agrees that definitely we are the lifeline, and we will provide even more support with the financial support that you are giving us now. And I hope that is available very soon, because we have done it tough, and many small NGOs they're just operating with absolutely a shoestring budget. So it'll be very timely, Minister. And I'm really grateful, Billie, that you were able to bring us all together, to have this conversation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that, Melissa. Absolutely, some really key messages there. I might
I
turn
must
to-
say, Melissa, that I did understand that. That's why I went and wrestled the Treasurer for $200 million for you.
Okay. Thank you, Minister.
And can I also say that we were having, West Sydney Community Forum was having conversations, and we were very aware of the work of your office, Minister, and the advocacy for the sector. So very welcome, and thank you. I might just turn to another question. So we have a question from Natalie Chiapazzo. So Natalie, welcome to the room. And Natalie, what's your question today for the panel?
Hi, thank you, Billie. Look, I came here today with the intention to talk about the resilience of the amazing young people that I work with in our community in Western Sydney. But unfortunately, this morning I woke up to numerous messages about another murder of a young person in our community. And so as I hold space for the trauma that this has created once again, the second time actually in 3 months, I've realised that our young people actually have no other choice but to be resilient. And their resilience comes from being in survival mode most of their lives, or all of their lives. And I guess the impact that we're all feeling now from COVID are the same impacts that they've faced, mainly due to the ongoing failures of the current service system. So poor mental health, suicide, homelessness, addiction, all of this has just further exacerbated that for our young people. But from resilience, as we all know, there comes a level of lived experience that I guess we cannot ignore when policies and decisions are made about our communities. Unfortunately for our young people, their experiences have been ignored for so many years. And as a result, there's been so many poor funding decisions, and resources are not being allocated where they have the greatest impact in our community. So my question for you, Minister, is how are you going to ensure that the experiences of our young people will be directly heard, and the new funding provided will be directed to the solutions that they deem appropriate for themselves and for their communities?
Natalie, I'm so sorry to hear of that news, and my condolences to the young people of Blacktown and to the family and community that are directly impacted and impacted more broadly, in fact. And an important question, not just in the times of COVID, but at other times as well. Minister, over to you.
Well, Natalie, there was a lot in that question, and I'm very sad to hear also of that young person losing their life. We actually have had, if we're talking about young people now, we've actually had quite a good decade of reduction in crime, reduction in incarceration with regard to young people. And in fact, I've got 6 youth detention centres that are within my portfolio, and they're very underutilised, I'm happy to say, in terms of inmates. So that's a tangible reflection of some of the successes that we've been able to achieve. Now, you know, I'm not by any way taking away what you were saying about, you know, mental health challenges for young people, and many of the other complex issues that are faced by some in our community, including the over 16,000 people in out-of-home care who are my responsibility also within the portfolio. What I can say is that, you know, in the areas of child protection and youth, you know, I've been a minister now, I think it's about 3 months, but I can tell you that I've been working very hard with the department on a range of different programs to try and improve what the department is delivering for our young people. So that's not something that stopped either with the change of minister or with this lockdown. In fact, I was still in here at the office at 9 o'clock last night, and we've been putting in some really long hours to try and address what are really complex and difficult problems that you've raised that will not be obviously solved overnight. But, you know, as the minister, I take, I'm inspired by the idea that whatever improvements we make, we are affecting a whole lot of lives, and that's what drives me to try and make improvements in the system. And obviously I can't go into all the detail of what's in train, but I can assure you that whether I'm the minister, we'll always be striving to improve things from where they are now.
Yeah, thank you, Minister. Thank you. And you know, when we can, I and the sector in Western Sydney would really welcome inviting you to more of our local services to see some of the work that's happening. And it's youth-led work, youth-designed work, and it's bottom up. So it'd be great to have an opportunity to have you to visit some of the agencies. Jioji, some thoughts around there on that?
Yeah, thanks, Natalie, for sharing that. Can I just encourage that social justice context in which we as people working as practitioners in the community, I'm so encouraged by our need to continue to do that. Keep going with that. For me, it's going back to this again, those critical conversations. How can we ensure that the government structures also understand their areas of accountability when creating systems that hopefully again are responsive to the actual needs of our community? I know I keep on coming back to that. And again, it's not criticisms of the government for the sake of criticisms, but it's about, again, having those hard, difficult conversations to ensure that we're all on the same page together, that we are trying to not create an us and them, especially with Western Sydney versus everyone else. And I know we don't do that in Western Sydney, but we want to ensure that we do have a shared collaborative conversation where we understand, you know, structural inequalities that perpetuate these particular disadvantaged contexts in which our communities may also exist. So keep going with those critical conversations, and I admire the social justice spirit in which we operate.
Thank you, Jioji. Thank you. And, you know, as a sessional academic at Western Sydney University, you know, it's just sorry, you know, the literature is really clear that we need to really start to look at some of these systemic and structural, you know, considerations that just continue to perpetuate those experiences on the ground by not just young people, but local communities. Melissa, any thoughts to contribute to that as well?
Yes, fully agree with what Jioji said. And I'd also like to just throw out there that this, you know, at the start of the pandemic, very often the media were reporting and people were feeling that this COVID had a direct link with Western Sydney. And can I say in closing that there is no link with Western Sydney? It is not correct. The pandemic and what has happened is a global issue. It's a national one. It's a state matter, and it's got nothing to do with the Western Sydney communities and communities living here. In order for a solution, and the next steps would be definitely government, business, and community working together, and government recognizing the not-for-profits, especially as I've mentioned, as the backbone to, especially in Western Sydney and our multicultural communities.
Yes,
thank you, Billie.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Melissa. An excellent summary. Now, this is obviously a topic that we could talk about for a long time. And our live stream, unfortunately, is limited just to the hour. but it would be great to pick up on some of the themes that have come out today, and maybe do some further live streams into the future, specifically looking at those. We have so many questions, and we still have people with a raised hand, and unfortunately we're just not going to be able to get to all your questions and comments, but thank you so much for sending them through. We will compile all those and endeavour to have a response to them separately outside of this. So please, if we don't get to you today, and we're not going to be able to, please note. But there is a couple that I just, in the time that we do have left. Leah Godfrey from Blackheath says that the childcare support package requires organisations to resolve not to accept any other Commonwealth government assistance such as JobSaver. The offers were released last night and decisions are required by tomorrow. Like many small businesses are reporting, not-for-profit organisations are being asked to make decisions with significant risk without access to timely information. So that sort of turnaround of 48 hours is just, really difficult. And thank you so much, Leah, for bringing that to our attention. Minister, were you aware of that? Are you, and you can take this question on notice, of course, because it's just happened. But are you aware of that situation?
No, I'll need to get advice on that. I'm not sure if that's relating to state government requirements or federal government requirements.
Yes.
What you've just reported, but so yes, I'll need to take that on notice, Billie.
Yes. I will certainly pass that on to you, and it's sounds like it is that federal-state relationship that has impacted on this decision, or has shaped or framed this decision. So it'd be good to get some sense of that. I mean, obviously we won't get it in time because it's due tomorrow, but at the same time, it's really important that there's these realistic timeframes. Oiwace from Youth Against Violence, thank you so much. We haven't been able to get to your question today, but I know that you want to talk about youth violence in our community, and yes, we can certainly look at that a little bit later on, and to the many other questions. Now, in the few minutes that we have left, what I would really like to ask all of you to share with us today is really, what's your hope for the future? Someone said recently, what we really need is hope. What the community, local people are looking for hope. They're looking for leadership. They're looking for direction and confidence. So what's your hope for the future? Jioji?
My hope is that we continue to invest in whole of government, whole of community approaches, where different departments are working together with different community-led organisations to ensure that we have that whole of community response. That is my hope, that can be achieved. My other hope is that we continue to work alongside our amazing leaders at different levels, including those in the community, our elders, those that are providing support in real time. A lot of it's outside of their own work hours, to just ensure that we continue to support one another amongst this current happenings.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Jioji. Absolutely. And I think we've really emphasised that point today, and it's just coming, out in all the work that we're doing. Minister, what's your hope for the future?
Look, in the very short term, my hope is that we are out of this lockdown very, very quickly. And I'm pretty confident that, we will see 70% vaccination rates within a very short period of time, within weeks, that we will see 80%, and that we will then be out, being able to visit our family and loved ones in their homes again. We'll be able to go out and eat in restaurants and live a much more normal life than we are living now. But, my father was, he was born 4 years before the Great Depression. He lived through Nazi-occupied Netherlands during the Second World War, and he grew up during the Depression, and their generation was often considered to be quite a remarkable generation. And I'd like to think that through these hard times at the moment, because of this pandemic, that we will become a stronger and better community as a consequence. That's my hope. I hope that we learn some really important lessons. We learn some important lessons about ourselves, what's important in life, and that we don't forget this time, and that we channel that for a better community and a better future.
Thank you, Minister. I'm sure we all join you in those hopes. And I think, you know, in terms of our policy and our service delivery frameworks, we've certainly learned plenty in terms of resilience, and particularly, and you know, one of the things I didn't say today, which is always at the forefront of my mind, is that when in times of crisis, whether that's bushfires or whether it's, you know, international crises or COVID or whatever it might mean, whatever it might be, what we know is it's people who are already experiencing vulnerability or socioeconomic challenges that are hardest hit. So we need to remember that lesson. And we can't forget that. And sometimes as a nation, we forget that. And we, you know, we go back to our restaurants and we go back to our lives, and we don't build the, you know, the infrastructure for resilience that we need. So thank you for that, Minister. Melissa, what's your hope for the future?
My hope is for all those people, Billie, we haven't spoken and we didn't touch on mental health today, but my hope is for all the people that are experiencing, because of the lockdown, the severe mental health issues, for their carers, for people who are giving up and wanting to give up now. My hope is don't. Things are getting better. There is a world out there. There are community organizations. Government is supporting those community organizations. Government and community working together is my hope for the future. Thank you, Billie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Melissa. And really some clear synergies between those messages, and no doubt from the broader community sector and from the communities that they work with, in terms of that, the importance of that working together and ensuring this, you know, sort of collaborative effort and wisdom, really, in terms of improving the health and well-being of people. So on that note, I've gone over time again, so my apologies. And I just want to thank our panel. Thank you so much, Professor Jioji Ravulo, for joining us, Professor and Chair of Social Work and Policy Studies from the University of Sydney. Great to see you, and thank you so much for your insights, and look forward to chatting again soon. Thank you, Melissa Monteiro, Chief Executive Officer, Community Migrant Resource Centre. And Melissa, as always, you ground us and make sure that, you know, we're not just talking at that policy level, but we're really talking about community, grassroots, local impacts. Always value your contribution. Thank you so much, Melissa. And the Honourable Alister Henskens MP, New South Wales Minister for Families, Communities and Disability Services. Minister, great to have you here, and really value those opportunities for you to sit around the table with us, for us to really, you know, think about how we can address some of these practical issues in terms of just sheer resources to do the work we need to do, but also try to build a policy framework and service delivery framework to address needs. So really value your time and appreciate how busy you all must be in this current time. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon, hopefully in real time. So it's been, you know, it's been a great discussion, and as always, there's plenty to discuss, and we always run out of time. I think today the real sort of key message is around the importance and the value and of community leaders, community groups and community organisations, and that comes across the spectrum from government, from academia, the evidence, and from the grassroots. So, we always knew that, but today was obviously re-emphasising that again. I just want to acknowledge that we didn't get a chance to answer all your questions, and thank you for them. We will combine that and we will endeavour to get some responses to that. If you do have any other further questions or thoughts or suggestions, please don't hesitate to contact us at any time. So I'd also like to remind you that Western Sydney Community Forum has a whole bunch of other services and opportunities and supports, and please don't hesitate to contact us at any time if you have any thoughts or questions. So thank you again for joining us today. It has certainly been a valuable session, and until next time, stay well and stay safe. Goodbye for now.